And one final thing from decision mathematics. Now, I have to be very honest, decision mathematics is probably my favourite, only because I've had to actually learn it as an adult. I didn't touch it when I was at school, had no idea what it was, and it was really refreshing to meet something new as a teacher. And I've really thoroughly enjoyed teaching this subject as well. It's one of those that, being very honest, if you find the essence of mathematics that we meet at GCSE quite challenging. So if you find algebra quite tough and it's a bit too meaty sometimes, you have to work really hard at it to get it. If you're not naturally intrinsic at learning mathematic concepts, I would recommend that using Decision D1 and D2 as one of your two applied modules would be the wisest thing you can do. The best thing about decision mathematics is that if you are a hard worker, if you follow the rules carefully, if you put in the hours, it can be one of the most rewarding subjects, and it's very easy to get full marks in if you work hard. A lot of people misunderstand when they get introduced to D1 and D2, think it's quite easy because it really isn't anything too deep in terms of thought. They think that there's no necessary need to actually sit down and practice it over and over again. However, if you do put the hours in, if you do take the time to lay out your work clearly, you can really pull up your final A-level grade by working very hard on these subjects and doing exceptionally well at them. So I'm going to give you an example of something that you can meet in decision math. This is one of the modules in D1. Okay, I'm going to give you a list of numbers. 7, 2, 4, 9, 3, oh, that's a hard number, and 5. An exam question will simply ask you to use something called the bubble sort. The bubble sort to put the numbers above into ascending order. So put the numbers above from lowest up to highest into ascending order. Now, this is one of the most challenging things I'm going to ask you to do, is that you can't just look at those numbers and go, 2, 3, 5, blah, 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 and work out the order by looking at it. The idea with decision mathematics is that you're meant to remove all mental human intelligence from the situation you're in, and think about what a computer will have to do to ensure that the right answer is achieved. So if I asked a computer to put those numbers into ascending order, they're not going to be able to look at that and think, I know that 2 is the smallest number, just by glancing over them, going 2 is the smallest number, going to pop it first. What they will have to do is go through a systematic set of steps to ensure that the final answer they achieve is the one that you're looking for. And one method of doing this is something called the bubble sort. The bubble sort asks you to highlight 2 numbers at once and consider their order individually. So the very first thing you do is that you circle the first 2 numbers and you look at them and say, are they in the correct order? So you can ask a computer a direct question, is A, the first number, smaller than B, the second number? If A is smaller than B, then do not touch these numbers and move on. However, in this particular situation, 7 is definitely not smaller than 2. So we're going to ask the computer to switch them over. So the first thing you do is write down 2, 7, as they are, and then write down the other numbers. Now this is, again, a very long process. However, if you follow rules, if you're systematic, there's plenty of time in the exam to do this. You can never really go wrong. So now we have our new set of numbers. Now we've considered the first 2, so we're going to move on to the second and the third. So we bubble them up. Again, the same question is asked. Is the first number smaller than the second number? And in this particular one, the answer again is no. So the 7 and the 4 once again get switched over. So it's a 2, 4, apologies. That'll do, that's a 4. 7, 9, 3, 5. Okay, and then we've gone on to the second step. And again, once again, you ask the same question. Now let's look at the third number and the fourth number. So you've got to bubble them, or attempt to bubble them in some way. And again, I ask you the same question. Is the 7 smaller than the 9? Is the first number smaller than the second? An A, second one, an A here. Thank God I don't have to do too much. The 7 is smaller, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. Now, in D1, and this is where it splits up between those that listen and those that do not, you can't just leave it the way it is. You have to rewrite all those numbers once again, because a computer will just check and rewrite, check and rewrite, check and rewrite, and you've got to follow rules as if you are a computer. So no shortcuts. So even though I'm not going to change anything here, I am definitely going to write those numbers out again, so I can show the examiner that I understand that I have checked the 3rd and the 4th number, and they do not have to change. I think I'm getting better at writing these now, aren't I? Kind of. It'll do. Right. And now we look at the 4th and the 5th number. So the 9 and the 3. And here you'll notice that you do have to switch over. So it's 2, 4, 7, 3, 2, 4, 7, 3, 9, and 5. And finally, you look at the last 2 numbers here, the 9 and the 5. And once again, we do have to switch them over because the 9 is bigger than the 5. So finally, you've got a 4, next a 7, 3, 5, and finally a 9. Now, if we're to look at this, not much has happened. I've gone through the whole list. I've bubbled each pair consecutively and finally finished up. But what you will notice if you look carefully is what have I achieved that's brought me one step closer to putting those numbers into ascending order. What you should notice, yes, there is a 2 at the beginning, which is the lowest, but I think that wasn't really what the intention was of this question. That's just by chance that that's already at the bottom. The intention, the first step of this, what it's done is made that 9 rise up to the top of the pile. So in effect, like a bubble rising up to the top of the water. So that 9 is now done. That 9 is now completed. Now if I was to do this again, so start again and bubble the first 2 numbers, so the 2 and the 4, then bubble the next 2 numbers, the 2nd and 3rd, then the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th, and the 5th and the 6th. What I should notice is that 7 now rises up to the top and will be in its correct place just below the 9. And that will be my second pass in this algorithm. What I've got written on the board already is the first pass where it's brought my 9 up to the top. In the second pass, the 7 will come up to the top. In the third pass, the next highest number will rise up and be next to the 7, which is the 5. In the fourth pass, the 4 will be there. And then you'll notice that the 2 and the 3 are in the correct positions. Now again, what I just said, you'll notice that the 2 and the 3 in the correct positions is not good enough because a computer will not notice this. What you will have to do is do the bubble sort once more all the way through. And the moment you do the bubble sort and there are no changes at all, you have then proven that the order of the numbers is sufficient, that the numbers are in ascending order, and then you are allowed to stop. So an examiner will make you lose a mark if you do not do it all the way through once more to show that there are no changes. And in a D1 exam, you've got to actually write down bubble sort, no changes, therefore numbers are in ascending order. You've got to explain why you have stopped at that moment in order to get full marks in a question like this. Now here, this question, I've only used 5 numbers. Now in an actual A-level examination, those would probably be 9 numbers there on the board, 9. And what they'll ask you to do is to do the bubble sort like I have above once. You'd have to do that once all the way through, thoroughly showing each step. But then after this, you can write down the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, however many passes there are after that. You can just write down the answers. You can work them out mentally and just write down the final answer. So they don't expect you to lose lots and lots and lots of paper. They expect to show the method once, and then after that, they've given you a mark for working out because they can appreciate that, and then they'll allow you to just draw the remaining passes without doing the bubble sort especially. Okay, I hope that's given you a nice introduction to it and put a little bit of a smile on your face. Put a smile on mine. I do love maths. It is great. Okay, if there are any questions, I'll be willing to take some later on. I hope that's been a good introduction for you. Okay, I haven't tried to introduce you to anything too complicated, but these are both exam questions that will come up if if you do the papers, you'll recognise a couple of them later on when you do start revising through these modules. Okay, thank you for listening. And I do apologise for my handwriting. I will practice and see you next time. And hopefully it won't be so bad. Thank you.
Perfect.
I won't make so many mistakes. It's okay.